Hello everyone and welcome to Yes Guy Gaming. My name is Garrett May. I'm a former professional beach volleyball player, indoor volleyball player, and professional coach. And my goal with this series is to hopefully share some of the tips and tricks that I've learned over the years with you to hopefully improve your volleyball game and help the community get better at the sport that we all love. So in this series, I want to cover some of those tips. I know there's a lot of videos out there about technique and some of the basics, but what I wanted to do was go through some of the stuff that I've learned over the years that you may not have heard. You may have heard some of this stuff, but some of the stuff you maybe haven't heard, maybe you can try it out in your game and see how it works for you, and hopefully you find that this can help and add some pieces to your volleyball game. So on this episode, we're talking about serving, and I've compiled 5 of my top tips to help be a better server, to help wrap your head around the idea of what it is to step back at the line and put in a good serve for your team. So the first tip, I guess, is not really a tip and more just something to really think about, a better way to think about what it is to be a server at one time. So what goes into a good serve? I mean, it's a valid question. Our goal as a server is to put the ball over into the other side of the court to make it as difficult as possible for our opponent to make a good pass. Now, sometimes that results in aces for us, which results in points, which is a great opportunity to score for our team. But at other times, it might be a better way to set up our defense. If we get a bad pass on the other side, maybe we have a better chance to play defensively on our side of the court. So there's 2 main things that go into a good serve: location and power. You know, serving in a tough spot that's away from where the passers are, that make it really difficult to move and get to where the ball is going, obviously is going to make it difficult on your opponents to pass. And oftentimes a well-placed serve might land for an ace just on its own. We see that happen all the time. And power. We often see everybody wants to be bringing full power on their serve, crushing it to their opponents and just overpowering them. And you see this happen a lot of time for aces as well, or tough passes, when somebody just rips a tough jump serve even right at a player, or a tough float serve right at somebody, makes it really tough to pass. So when you mix these 2 things together in various combinations, maybe you got a really powerful serve at a tough location, that's how you result and give yourself the best chance to land an ace for your team, or really put the pressure on your opponents and really make them have a tough time of passing it up. So something just to keep in mind there is that, yes, ideally you want to have a great location and a lot of power, but you don't always need to have both to put in a tough serve. If you can bring a ton of power, and maybe you don't need to worry so much about where it's going, or if you got a great location and you can hit it every time, well, maybe you don't need to add so much power if you can really pick apart the spots on the court. Just something to keep in mind. This brings me to point 2, and that is when you're back to serve, how often are we stepping back there and actually picking in our mind which location on the court we're going to serve? It's something that's easily overlooked, and I found myself as a player on the World Tour often not doing this myself. When you step back at the line, it is so helpful to just in your mind visualize and think and pick the spot on the court where you want to serve, and you'll find often maybe it doesn't go exactly there, but it heads in that direction because you've established the intent to put the ball there. If you don't, and oftentimes you'll see people step back at the line and just flail at it and serve, and it could go anywhere, which sometimes this will work for us, but sometimes this could result in a really easy serve right at somebody. So whenever you step back at the line, get in the habit of picking exactly where you want to serve and establish some sort of intent with what you want to do when you're back there at the line. Along the same vein as picking a location, tip number 3 is to really not forget about short and deep. So often I see at kind of mid-levels of play in club or in university or college, people just serving their serves every time to the middle of the court because that's kind of a natural place that the serve would go. Rarely do I see people changing it up, popping in a short serve or really exaggerating hitting a deep serve. Yeah, maybe you take a little bit of risk. You might hit it in the net or out the back, but this can be such a great way to put pressure on your opponents. And I know it sounds obvious. A lot of times if you're a volleyball player and you've been in a practice, coach will say, okay, serve it short now, or serve to this position, or serve it deep. But oftentimes when we step back at the line, we often overlook, we're thinking about maybe who do we want to serve at, or which sideline are we aiming for. But it's often helpful to think about, okay, well, maybe it didn't work here in the middle of the court, maybe I'll serve it short, maybe I'll serve it deep. These can be really easy ways to put pressure on your opponent without really changing much with your serve. If you're hitting a float serve, why don't I just drop it a bit short? That completely changes the outlook. So when you're back at the line, don't forget you've got options short and deep as well as side to side. So keep that in mind. Tip number 4 has to do with trying to establish some power with our serve. I haven't talked a lot about that. I've talked a little bit more about prepping your location, but power is also a super valid way to get some pressure on your opponents with the serve. And when you do that, when you hit it hard, it has a higher chance of going out the back. I mean, you're just hitting it harder, so for it to sail along and miss out of bounds beyond the ends of the court is a real possibility, especially when you're ripping a jump serve or even floats that maybe catch some wind and fly out the back. So something you can do to help mitigate this risk is by picking a proper angle with where you're going to take some risk with your serve. I did a little bit of math here, and I know this is a volleyball tips video, so bringing math into this is wild, but when you're going down the line, just straight down the line, from the end line, straight line to your opponent's end line, depending on when you're playing beach or indoor, that's either 16 meters or 18 meters, depending. I mean, if you're playing beach, it's 16 meters, indoor, it's 19 meters. I'm not sure if you work in feet or meters or whatever, but that's what we work with here in the metric system. But if you change the angle of your serve a bit, and if you go to the far right or left side of the court and aim on a diagonal to the opposing corner, so instead of going straight down the line, you go corner to corner, it actually increases the length of the court, the amount of space you have to serve. So if you're looking at a beach volleyball court, instead of having 16 meters, you now have 17.9 meters, so almost 18 meters. For those of you who work in feet, that's 59 feet that you have to work with, which is quite a bit more than if you're going straight down the line. So you can hit that extra power and have a little bit more room for it to go in. Indoors, it actually works out to be a lot more because the court is 9x9. You have that much more space. That angle in the indoor court is actually 20.1 meters, that length. So you're actually getting more than 2 full meters of extra space to serve. So those of you who work in feet, that's 66 feet on the diagonal on the indoor court, which is a lot of extra space to work with. So you can hit it a lot harder and trust that it's more likely to go in when you're going angle to angle rather than straight down the line. And my final tip for being a better server, and this might seem like a simple one, but is often overlooked, and that is to practice. Do it 1,000 times. Do it 10,000 times. You want to get better at serving? Go and do it. A lot of times we think, oh, maybe we can just add this tweak or add this thing into our serve. It's going to really change our whole outlook. And that may be true, especially for some of these tips. If I change where I'm serving, maybe it makes me a lot better. But you're going to need to practice that. You're going to have to get comfortable with whatever serve you're doing, whether it's float, spin, sky ball, underhand, whatever style of serve you're doing, you're gonna have to practice it and do it a lot of times to get really comfortable and getting good at it. Now, this can also work really well for us when adding new types of serves to our repertoire. And this can help kind of add tools to our toolbox, so to speak, if we practice other serves as well. Now, it's a lot easier to do potentially for beach volleyball players, especially when the weather's nice, to kind of find a net, potentially go down and just figure it out. But court availability is definitely tough. But this is something you can also do if you got a wall, if you got a ball, if you got a partner to play with, to work on your types of serves even without a net, just to get that comfort level of actually executing the contact goes a long way for when you step back at that line. Well, you've done it a lot of times, you know you can do it. All right, well, that's my 5 tips for how to be a better server in volleyball and beach volleyball. Hopefully you all found this helpful. If you have any feedback for me, hit me up in the comments below. I know this one wasn't a lot about technique. It was a lot more about kind of the thoughts and some of the more strategical points of serving, which is kind of how my mind works. But hit me up in the comments below. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate the support. Thank you all so much for watching, and we hope to see you next time on Yes Guy Gaming.